Okay, so the recording is enabled now. Okay, hi everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'm really excited to bring this TDX session live to you. We are hosting this event because we really want to make sure you all learn about this awesome new product, the development with Anypoint Code Builder. And I have Rohan and Dakota with me who will be presenting this. Before we dive into this content, just a forward-looking statements. So, if Salesforce is publicly listed company, and customers should base their purchasing decisions on the products and features available. All right. So I am just a few introductions. I am Rajesh. I'm part of Aviva as Enterprise Senior Integration Manager. I've been with Aviva previously MuleSoft past for 5 to 6 years now, and I've been working on integration space close to 10 years. And I have Rohan. Rohan needs no introduction. I've seen him in the last year's TDX and Dreamforce. He's always engaged in community and have done a lot of sessions previously as well. So thanks Rohan for joining. Rohan is a product marketing manager at MuleSoft. And I'll let introduce Rohan and Dakota in just a bit. And we have Dakota as well, who'll be joining us. He's product management manager at MuleSoft. And we have an awesome agenda lined up today. We will go over the new features about the Anypoint Code Builder, and then we have a demo planned, and then we have some fun activities planned by Rohan. So this is going to be really fun and fully engaged session. Please put your questions, Q and A's on the chat window, which is open to all, and I will keep track of the questions, and then as and when we get there, we can ask these questions to Rohan and Dakota. So before before I'll hand it over to Rohan, and then we can take it forward from there.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rajesh. Do you want me to present and take over?
Yes, please. Yeah, please go ahead.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I think you need to stop presenting first. It's not letting me. It's like grayed out on my screen.
Got it.
Awesome. Yeah. Oops, sorry. Cool. A little ahead of myself. All right, so quick agenda for what we are planning today. We're going to be going over just an overview of what Anypoint Code Builder is for anyone that's joining or hasn't seen any of the previous sessions. From there, we're going to be going into a demo. We're going to be highlighting some of the new features and kind of the end-to-end functionality that's currently available within Anypoint Code Builder. We did just have a release actually yesterday. So that's awesome. And we are kind of introducing some new functionality into the product. And we'd love to highlight that today. And Dakota, my man over there, will be taking that away with us. So I'm excited for that. Then we're going to be going through the roadmap, just kind of showing you guys the road to GA with Anypoint Code Builder and what you guys can expect in the coming months. And then finally, we'll have a little fun session that I didn't get to actually do at TDX. It was a bummer. So you guys will be the first ones I get to try this with. I'm super excited, but it'll be a little quiz. So pay attention as we go through the first 3 sections, because we will be quizzing everyone at the end on what they've learned.
Yep.
And then finally, we'll have some Q&A, answer any questions you guys have on Code Builder. All right, let's kind of dive into it. So quick overview of what Anypoint Code Builder actually is. It is MuleSoft's next generation IDE that aims to help developers accelerate project delivery by giving them a modern cloud-native environment to develop in, all powered by Visual Studio Code. It gives them faster build times with built-in real-time design recommendations and best practices. And again, that is, I would say, I'll call it out here, a little forward-looking functionality here, but kind of the vision of what we have Anypoint Code Builder coming. And then finally, it gives developers more ways to reuse with building blocks, again, forward looking, but also code snippets. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. So with Anypoint Code Builder, you're kind of getting 3 core user journeys, and we're kind of unifying a lot of different functionality into a single tool, giving you one place to design, implement, and develop all of your APIs and integrations. So we're touching on each of these. So first up, design. So with Anypoint Code Builder, you can actually start designing your APIs directly in the tooling. We currently support both RAML and OAS to author all your API specs. We also have a built-in API console that will auto-generate all of your documentation as you design. And then for actual testing, there is a local mocking service. So this makes it much easier to actually make sure APIs are running and kind of built the way you want them before you publish them to Exchange directly from Code Builder. Next up, implementation. When you actually go to implement your APIs, first up, you'll notice when you start with Anypoint Code Builder, you have this really cool experience with this like dual experience. You have a graphical flow editor on the left-hand side, and then you have kind of XML on the right-hand side. So you can choose how you want to actually go through and build out your APIs. On top of that, you also have this kind of like full life cycle of API implementation. You can build, debug, run, and deploy all within Anypoint Code Builder. And again, you have the ability to import and scaffold all of your APIs for your implementations. So you're kind of getting a lot of functionality packed into the tool. And then finally, develop. Really quickly touching on just what we're doing in terms of modernizing or even making it kind of more future looking in terms of how you develop your integrations and your APIs. First up, I mentioned before, a little bit of forward-looking functionality, but something that will be coming soon is this concept of best practices or built-in or next best action. This is kind of going to be the ability to kind of see, hey, we think based on what you're designing and what you're building, this would be a good next step. You can hit accept, and you can actually implement that or kind of push that into your flows. I also touched on this again earlier, but this concept of code snippets, being able to package code and then reuse that, and then make it available on Exchange and actually kind of push it out to the entire organization. This is also really powerful and something we're really excited for. And then finally, kind of the dual approach of having this desktop IDE, but also having the option to kind of translate that over into the cloud, hop on your favorite browser and just jump into Code Builder. Again, just bringing a touch of modern or more future-looking experience to the process of designing and building our APIs. And again, as always, you have Exchange kind of in the backside, getting access to that, all the connectors and templates and everything that you want to use directly from there. Again, very powerful functionality and very, very useful in terms of building that like end-to-end experience. And yeah, so that's kind of like a quick summary of Anypoint Code Builder and what you guys can expect, but I know you guys all want to see it and you want to see this new stuff that we just released. So I'm going to pass it off to Dakota. He's going to take over. Actually, I'm going to go through this slide, Dakota, and you can share your screen to start taking us to the demo.
Sounds great.
Take it away.
Awesome. Well, I'm sorry to kill the vibe. First off, I'll start with an introduction, and then I'll get into the bad news. So my name is Dakota Garcia. I've been with MuleSoft for a couple of years now. I'm one of the product managers Code Builder. For those who are familiar with the product, you might know Simone. Well, today you're stuck with me, who is also part of the team now, so hopefully I don't disappoint. The bad news I was speaking about is our release is actually today. So the demo that we're going to be seeing will be in our staging environment, but all of the new functionality that we're going to be showing off today should be available sometime later today or early into. So just a high-level overview on our demo here. We're going to start off in our web IDE for Anypoint Code Builder. We're going to run through how to design an API specification. Then we're going to take that specification, we're going to implement it and develop an integration with Salesforce. And finally, we'll take a look at how to debug that application and then deploy it to Cloud Hub. So Rohan, I'm good to go to start sharing whenever you're ready. Awesome. So should be good to go. So within our Anypoint platform here, so it doesn't matter if you have a trial account, if you have a subscription, as soon as you log in, you're going to be able to see Anypoint on the left-hand side of the page here. We're going to go ahead and click on our Get Started button. And this will take you to or Anypoint Code Builder. So if you scroll down a little bit, you'll find some more information about the 3 user journeys that Rohan was talking about earlier. But I would say even more important, at the bottom of the page, we have some helpful links to some of our tutorials, to documentation, things like setup guides or how to get started. And I think from the product perspective, one of the most important things on the bottom right-hand side of the page here is the ability to submit your feedback as you start to use the beta. So we love feedback on the product team. Please, please, please go to our public GitHub repo. If you have suggestions for enhancements, if you find bugs, now is the time to report it. I always joke that if you don't report it during the beta, then you can't complain about it once we go GA. So definitely please give us your feedback. We love going when we're making future enhancements. So you'll notice that we have 2 versions here. We have a web version and a desktop version. The desktop isn't available just yet. We're working towards that. And at GA, our goal is to be able to offer a desktop version of Anypoint Code Builder. And today we're going to be working within the web IDE. So to go ahead and launch that, all I have to do is click the launch button. It's going to pull open another tab here. So my IDE open. One of the first things that you'll notice is that we are based on Visual Studio Code. So this is a departure from Anypoint Studio, which was historically based on Eclipse. We wanted to modernize, and it was very clear to us the IDE of the future. All of the developer surveys, the feedback, things like that, the most recommended IDE was Visual Studio Code, the most used IDE code. So we wanted to meet the developers where they were at and where they were developing. So that is why we landed on an extension for VS Code for Anypoint Code Builder. So you'll notice as I click on the extension here on the left-hand side of the page, it's going to open up with our 3 user journeys. We're going to go through each of those today. So I'm going to go ahead and start with designing an API. This is going to open up a second screen where I have the option to choose if I want to design an API spec or if I want to design an API fragment. And today we're going to be doing a specification. So we can just call this test, and that will be our project name. And then for today, we're going to be using RAML. And one of the new features that we're coming out later today with is support for business groups. So you'll notice my Anypoint organization. If I jump back here, have several business groups already configured. Historically, Anypoint Code Builder did not support business groups. So it was a highly requested feature. Lots of folks asking for it. So we heard the feedback, we've implemented it, and now we have the ability to support business groups within Anypoint Code Builder. So I just have to pick one from the drop-down list here. I'm going to choose business group 2, and I'm going to click on create project. So you can see here, we get this little notification at the bottom right-hand side of the page where we are creating our API spec. And in just a second here, it's going to refresh and we will have our RAML file. Perfect. So right now, the RAML file, I'm going to give all of the resources a second to load here. We're doing this live, so I want to make sure you guys can see all the cool functionality. I don't want any errors, so just a moment to load, and then we can start to design our API specification. We can use some of those recommendations that Rohan was mentioning earlier to help iterate as we begin to put together our list of methods. So we should get a pop-up here in just a few seconds letting us know that everything has loaded. There it is. Perfect. So the first thing I want to open up is this button at corner, and this is our API console. So really what this is a window for you to view your documentation, and it's going to build your documentation dynamically as we begin to iterate through our API specification. So let me close these out and let's start stepping through it. So to use recommendations, I just have to hit Control Space. We'll see that now we have all these helpful recommendations starting point for when I'm developing my API. So in this case, I want a base URI. I already have one configured. So I'll paste that here. And then we can step into different things. So maybe I want to set my media type and I want to set this to JSON. And then maybe I want to set a version. So we'll set this to version 1. And let's set our protocols. HTTP. And you can see as I'm going through this, the recommendations are making it super easy to just speed through the configuration and really cut back on the amount of code that I'm having to write. So I already have a spec built out, and in the interest of time, I'm just going to paste that in here. And you can see our documentation is updating dynamically on the fly as we're adding things into the spec. So here I've created a couple of different endpoints. One is for the contact object, and the second is if you're providing an ID for contact. So if I drill down into those, you can see that I have the ability to either retrieve a list of all my contacts, create a new contact, or if I provide an ID, I can retrieve just a single contact, or I can update an existing contact. The method we're really going to be working with today is this post method for creating a new contact. And you can see as I drill down into that, we've taken this section of code here and basically ported that into the documentation so we could see a sample endpoint, an example request, all of the elements within that request that I need to provide, which ones are required, which ones are optional, if they're integers, strings, so what their data types are. And then we have some example responses defined as well. So I have a successful 200 level response here. And then for status code 4, that's going to be an invalid input response. But that's not all. The API console also has a built-in mocking service. If you click on try it, you're actually able to send a sample request and see what kind of a response you would get. So without even publishing this or implementing your API, you're able to test it all out. So here I'm providing all of the necessary parameters. I get a 200 successful response. But if I were to provide something like this and click on send, you can see that now I'm getting a bad request. Even going live, I'm able to test and see how it will work through our mocking service. And yeah, so I think that rounds out the design side. I'm pretty comfortable with how my spec looks. So I want to go ahead and push my changes to my version control system. Let's go ahead and do that here. Should be good. Let me move forward here. Okay. And then the next step after my version control system has been synced, I can actually publish this API specification to Exchange. And this is where we're going to begin to use the command palette. So this is a feature within VS Code, provides lots of helpful tips and commands that helps with your workflow. Easy would be like switching between light and dark themes. But in our case, we've actually added a bunch of MuleSoft specific commands to the command palette just to help with your workflow. So now that I'm happy with my API specification, I can actually go ahead and publish this to Exchange. So I'll choose that here. And yeah, that is weird. Let me refresh this. There it goes. Okay. Things. And now we can push our change. So we'll wait for those changes to sync. Good to go. Now I can publish to Exchange. I have me give this a name. And I'll just set this to V1. And you can see that now we are publishing our spec to Exchange, which is basically MuleSoft's marketplace. For those of you who aren't familiar, data weave libraries, API specifications, a whole list of assets that's going to be Exchange. So we'll give it a second here. Once it finishes publishing that API spec, we're actually going to move into our second user journey, which is how do we take this spec and then implement it? So it's actually going to be smart enough within Anypoint Code Builder. It's going to give me a prompt that says, would you like to implement this API spec? I'm going to choose yes. I'll have to give it a name. So let's just test TDX and we'll call this implementation. Enter. We'll select the directory there. And now we can see that we've begun to scaffold this API. So basically, we've taken everything in our design spec, and Anypoint Code Builder is automatically going to build a framework that we can begin our implementation on. So our screen refreshed. Now we're in the implementation project. So if I open up source main Mule, XML file. I'm actually going to open up this window as well. We'll give that a second to load, still booting up. But what we've begun to do is we've taken that API spec and we've put together all of this XML code automatically. This cutback on all to write this, develop things like error handlers, how to do certain transforms. That's all going to happen automatically. And if we click this button in the upper right-hand corner, it's going to open up our graphical user interface. So we recognize the fact that living in the code isn't the best user experience. You want to be able to see a visual representation of all of these different elements. So that's what's going to show up in the left-hand side of the screen here. So we'll give it a second to prepare the flow canvas. But within that, we're actually able to see all of our different elements here. So like I was talking about earlier, we've automatically built out things like our HTTP listener, a router that's going to go to our subflows, different sort of error handling scenarios. And you'll notice that as I click on each of these elements, it's highlighting the section in the XML code on the right-hand side of the page that corresponds with that individual action. So now let's move into our implementation. We have our requests for contact. If we look at our flow list here, we can see all of our different endpoints. Today, we're going to be focused on creating a contact. And what do I want to happen when I create a contact? I want that contact to be automatically created in my CRM system, which in this case will be Salesforce. So basically, somebody will send an API request with contact information, and I will create that contact object within my Salesforce organization. So to do that, we need to add some connection configuration. So here I will do configuration properties. And this is basically me telling the system where it's going to find some of my credentials. So that's going to be in the config YAML file. And now I need to do some configuration specific to my Salesforce connector. So the Salesforce connector comes pre-bundled with Anypoint Code Builder. So out of the box, you'll have access to that connector and its operations. And so here, once again, I'm using recommendations. So if I hit Control Space, I can just search for Salesforce, and you'll see that I have a config object here. But if I open it up, it's not very helpful. I don't know what connection configuration information I need to input into the system for it to process successfully. So that's why I'm excited to show off what Rohan mentioned called snippets. So you'll notice here that we have this different icon, and that indicates that this config is a snippet. And a snippet is a Visual Studio Code concept, and it's basically reusable code components that can either be defined by you or your business, or sometimes even us at MuleSoft. We will pre-build snippets, just like we've done here with Salesforce, and pre-bundle them into Anypoint Code Builder. And you'll notice if we look at our here, it has a lot more information that's usable to us. It has things like the username, the password, the security token. All of that's going to be defined right off the bat, as compared to the other one, sort of the out-of-the-box one, where there's no information provided whatsoever. So just a lot more helpful here. So I'm actually going to stop sharing for 2 seconds while I add my credentials here.